Read it and whatever. But anyway, this is the Curfew Tower in Cushendall in County Antrim. Is based in 2014 that there was an artist residency, and this book was published as a result. But it's in conjunction with the Seamus Heaney Centre in Belfast, and Bill Drummond, who is Scottish actually, doesn't have much Irish input necessarily here tonight so far, but in any case, Bill Drummond was a huge fan of Seamus Heaney, and after Seamus Heaney died, Bill Drummond, who was involved in that Curfew Tower residency, wrote to a friend of his who had asked him to come down to a school to do a drama class with Seamus Heaney, and he was completely overawed by Seamus Heaney because Bill Drummond grew up. He was originally with the KLF band that some of you may know, but or not. But in any case, the right thing to do with it. Yeah. Sometimes Sean might not agree necessarily. No. But in any case, he worked briefly with Seamus Heaney in a school on a drama project, and he was completely overawed by Seamus Heaney's connection to the kids. But in any case, when he heard Seamus Heaney had died, he wrote to this friend of his who had asked him to come and do that class. And the way he wrote took the form of a poem, and I thought it was really beautiful, and I brought it along to read in any case, which I'm going to do. His mate is called Vic, anyway. Dear Vic, I switched on the radio this morning. There was a familiar voice, a voice that I am always glad to hear, whatever the circumstance. But of course, it is not only his voice, but the words, and the way that the words are put together. He put those words together in a way that helped me through those empty years of the 1980s. It was his words and the way he put them together, and the things that they did in my head and my heart, that formed a third of that magi of voices. Voices belonging to living poets that were working in these islands, that made me want to work with words again, that made me want to be a poet, that made me think that maybe I had been a poet all along, but I had just got lost along the way. Or that maybe I was still a poet, but I had become a conceptual one, that did not need to use words, but just plotted out the career of Echo and the Bunnymen in the shape of rabbit's ears. The other two voices belonged to the other two kings of their age, High Windows and Moortown, were what I needed between 83 and 86. But on the bedside table with those two was always the death of a naturalist. But the other two died, as poets are supposed to do, which meant the birthday letters would be the last I would ever read for the first time. Then, sometime in the late 1990s, or was it the early 2000s, you asked me down to Bristol to do something. I do not know what I was supposed to be doing, but most of this doing was being done by this poet, the one that was still alive and had a long time to live because he was still young. Seemed like a teddy boy up from the country. And you had him working with the teenagers who wanted to write rhymes that they could rap, and they had no idea who this poet was, would not have known what a Nobel Prize for Literature was, but he inspired them, and he helped them. And he did not push anything down their throats. He made them feel tall, made them feel that their words counted. And in the evening there was an event with ladies who came to fawn and gawp and talk about poetry and asked why it didn't rhyme. And they asked this poet why he was not the poet laureate now that Ted is dead. He tried in the most polite of ways to explain about being Irish. But are you from Northern Ireland? Surely that means you are British, a lady observed. Yes, but I am Irish from Ireland. And he smiled warmly, and the good humour was kept in place, and nobody was made to feel stupid. And afterwards the poet and I spoke, and I tried to impress him with my stories of childhood holidays in Donegal, and about the Curfew Tower where artists can now stay and work. And he told me how he knew the Curfew Tower well, and he loved that Antrim coast. And that night I read The Death of a Naturalist from cover to cover, like I'd never read it before. And then the familiar voice on the radio stopped, and I was told that Seamus Heaney had died. The voice, with the words in the right order, had died. There would be no more of those words. No more, through living roots awaken in my head, but I've no spade to follow men like them. Between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it.
Oh, fantastic.